He is the father of all coaching trees, the origin point of a Goliath, all-encompassing tree whose branches reach some of the most renowned coaches to ever roam the sidelines. Every video on this channel has been leading us to this one coach. As legendary as the coaches that followed him, a true member of the proverbial Mount Rushmore of NFL coaches, this episode is of course focusing on none other than Paul Brown. Before we dive into this Olympic swimming pool, dare I even say ocean-sized pool of NFL coaches, I'd first like to say thank you. Thank you to everyone who's watched my videos so far and that has been kind enough to leave comments and interact with my channel. I assure you I read every single comment that's left, and it brightens my day knowing that someone has watched and has enjoyed. So thank you. In fact, this very video, as well as the Bill Walsh video, were suggested by a comment left from a viewer. I genuinely appreciate it, and I hope you sit back and you enjoy this video because it's about to get wild. Our focus this episode is on former Browns and Bengals coach Paul Brown and his absolute behemoth of a coaching impact that he has left on the league. I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but literally every coach I've highlighted already on this channel falls somewhere in relation underneath Brown. With that being said, this video would be an hour long plus if I dove into each branch here. So some might not get as much attention in this particular video, but I promise that I either have already had a video focusing on that coach in their section of the tree, or I have plans in the future to make a video on that section. So rest assured, the detailed breakdowns will be there somewhere on this channel, if not in this video itself. Okay, now let's learn about Paul Brown himself. Born in Norwalk, Ohio in 1908, Brown would begin to build his reputation in the state he called home. He graduated from Miami University of Ohio when he received a degree in education. A common theme I've seen in most great coaches that I've covered on this channel is that they're all great teachers. So the fact that he was an education major does not surprise me in the slightest. Anyway, once he graduated, he took a job as a teacher and football coach at the high school level, where he amassed a 96, 9, and 3 winning record. Clearly, he was a winner from the very beginning. And this is an important fact, because it starts to build his notoriety within the region. He then turned this high school coaching success into a job as head coach at Ohio State University, where he would go on to win the national championship in 1942. By this point, he was obviously a fairly popular football celebrity in the Ohio region. However, World War II brought his coaching skills to the Navy's Great Lakes Training Station. It's there that Cleveland's newly formed professional team reached out to Paul Brown, offering him to be their head coach in 1946. Brown accepted the position on this still nameless team in the recently created All-American Football Conference. So when it came time to name that team, the league held a fan vote, and the result of that vote ended up having Cleveland's team named the Browns, after their newly hired and regionally famous football coach, Paul Brown. Brown would, of course, continue his great football success at the professional level. He went 52, 4, and 3 in the American Football Conference and won the championship in all 4 years of the AAFC's existence. When the league merged the Browns into the NFL in 1950, his former AAFC team continued to dominate despite the expectation that the NFL would be more difficult. In fact, his first year in the NFL, he ended up winning the championship. He won 2 more championships back-to-back in 1954 and 1955. His success was credited to the great innovation that he brought to the early days of professional football, many citing him as the first to use game film to scout opponents, to hire a full-time coaching staff of assistants, and to be regularly testing players on their knowledge of the playbook. Seriously, they say he had players taking written tests to prove they knew what the playbook was. I guess a callback to his education degree, I suppose. It's also worth mentioning that he played a large role in breaking the color barrier of professional football by hiring the first African Americans to play modern-era professional football. However, his strict coaching style and a power rift forming between him and the owner of the Browns resulted in Paul Brown being fired in 1963, despite his incredible success. Brown was out of professional football for 6 years following his firing. Finally, in 1968, the new American Football League, the AFL, formed a franchise in Cincinnati, Ohio. Brown accepted the position as head coach and was given the title of general manager, among many other powers. I guess you can take that kind of control when you are the third largest investor in that team, which Paul Brown was. Anyway, in 1970, the Bengals merged into the NFL, and that same year, they drafted the sensational quarterback Greg Cook. Unfortunately, Cook was injured during that 1970 season, and the offense had to be modified. Luckily for Brown, he was great at hiring assistants. One of those assistants was none other than Bill Walsh. More on him later in the episode. While Paul Brown would never make it further than the first round of the playoffs as their coach of the Bengals, he did finish his professional coaching career in total with a 213, 104, and 9 win-loss record, and a remarkable coaching tree to go along with it. Our first segment of this coaching tree leads us to Don Shula, the first of many legends on this tree. Shula is of course famous for being the head coach of the only team in NFL history to go undefeated and win the Super Bowl, a truly perfect season. Shula also amassed a crazy 328 wins, 156 losses, and 6 ties during his time as the Colts and Dolphins head coach. Now, I usually do not include coaches as part of the official coaching tree unless they were directly influenced from being on the coaching staff, but I thought I would include Shula anyways. Shula was drafted by Paul Brown's Browns in the 1951 season as a defensive back. Shula was an Ohio boy himself, just like Paul Brown, and he assuredly learned something from being a member of Brown's team, given all the innovation and unique ideas that Paul Brown was presenting. Something had to stick. Many considered this to be enough to include him in Paul Brown's coaching tree, so I will. And if you'd like to learn more about Shula in greater context of his particular branches of the tree, be sure to watch my episode comparing him and Bill Belichick by clicking the link. The next coach on our list is Blanton Collier. Collier was both an assistant to Paul Brown and his replacement when Brown was fired from Cleveland. Collier was a part of Brown's staff from the very beginning, serving as backfield coach in 1946 all the way up to 1953, and again for 1 year in 1962 as offensive backfield coach, before he was ultimately promoted to head coach. He finished with a 76, 34, and 2 record, and he won 1 NFL championship with the Browns in 1964. Now, a rarity for this tree is that Collier has no notable extensions himself to contribute to the overall coaching tree. Weeb Ewbank is the next noticeable coach in the Paul Brown coaching tree. Ewbank actually draws his connections to Brown all the way back to the 1943 and 1944 seasons when he was an assistant coach for Brown on the US Navy's Great Lakes Training Station football team during World War II. Ewbank wouldn't join Brown in the Professional Football League until 1949 as a tackles coach, a position he served until 1954, when he became the head coach of the Baltimore Colts. He would be the head coach of the Colts until 1962, when he would then take the position as head coach with the Jets from 1963 to 1973. In total, Ewbank won 130 games, lost 129 games, and tied 7. He also won 2 NFL championships with the Colts in 1958 and 1959, and won a Super Bowl with the Jets in 1968. Notable members of Ewbank's branches include coaches like Chuck Knox and Buddy Ryan. Ryan would later go on to extend branches further with names of coaches like Rex Ryan and Jeff Fisher. Nearing the end of this list is our next legendary coach, Bill Walsh. Walsh served as Paul Brown's receivers and later quarterbacks coach from 1968 to 1975 while on the Cincinnati Bengals. He would later take his own innovation and X's and O genius to the 49ers, where he served as head coach between 1979 and 1988, totaling a 92-59-1 record. During those 10 years in San Francisco, he won 3 Super Bowls in 1981, 1984, and 1988. But, besides from inventing an entire offensive scheme known as the West Coast offense, Walsh also played his hand in creating a wide-reaching coaching tree of his own. Names on that tree include Ray Rhodes, Dennis Green, George Seifert, and Mike Holmgren. This part of the tree continues to grow and expand to this day, and I go into more details on this particular section in my Bill Walsh episode that you can watch right here. Our last name on the Paul Brown coaching tree is finally here, but he is certainly not the least. He is Chuck Noll, the legendary Pittsburgh Steelers coach who served from 1969 to 1991. But before his dominant run as Steelers head coach, he was a player for Paul Brown's Cleveland Browns. Similar to Don Shula, who started our list today, Noll was never a coach on Brown's staff, but he was a guard and linebacker for Brown between 1953 and 1959. Chuck Noll was described as the quintessential Paul Brown football player who worked hard, stayed quiet, and listened deeply. Paul Brown's innovative way of coaching was sure to have made some sort of impression on Chuck Noll, who would later go on to coach under Don Shula, another disciple of Chuck Noll. And many consider Noll to be a member of Paul Brown's coaching tree, so again, I'm including him on this list. As head coach of the Steelers, Noll would go on to win 193 games, lose 148, and tie 1, on his way to an incredible 4 Super Bowl victories, back-to-back in 1974 and 1975, as well as in 1978 and 1979. Noll's coaching branches include names like John Fox and Tony Dungy. Dungy would go on to expand the trees even further with names like Mike Tomlin and Lovie Smith. And that concludes our look at the absurdly good coaching tree of Paul Brown. There are so many details further down this tree and so many legends that I can't possibly cover it all in one video. But if you're interested, I invite you to browse through my coaching trees playlist here on YouTube and look up more into these incredible careers and coaches that I've listed. Brown has left an unforgettable impact on the league and the game of football itself. Brown is credited with making professional football, well, professional. His impact on the game turned professional football from an unorganized, free-flowing game into a structured, serious, professional sport. He not only won games and championships himself, but he brought along talented staffs that would continue to expand and grow their own legends. Paul Brown is truly a name synonymous with the game of professional football. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. I would greatly appreciate the feedback. And be sure to subscribe to stay notified of future uploads. And let me hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment with any additional information I may have left out in this video, or maybe future video ideas that you would like to see. I like to say that all information in this video came from Wikipedia, Pro Football Reference, and the Encyclopedia Britannica. So lastly, please share this video online with any friends or acquaintances you know who love football. I'd love to grow this community that we have forming here. With that being said, I greatly appreciate you for watching this far. Thank you very much.